Hi, everybody. This is Slava Kurilak at Produvia, and I am super excited for you to join this live stream where we discuss how to innovate in the real estate industry, how to use AI technologies to do so. At first, I would love to give you a little bit of background about myself so you can better understand who I am and where I'm coming from. Over the last 7 years, I've had a chance to work with some of the leading companies around the world to develop AI solutions. And in that period, I have noticed that a lot of companies are struggling to figure out how you would go about using AI technologies. And the motivation to this live stream is I want to share with everyone practical tips, practical use cases or applications of how you would use AI technology and how you would innovate and how you would create solutions for the real estate sector. Now, the real estate sector is quite diverse, and I'm more than happy to focus on 5 use cases today, but I do want to emphasize that there are many ways to solve many real estate problems. And I want to emphasize that this is an interactive live stream. If you are joining this live stream and you have a question, feel free to comment below, and I'm more than happy to answer your question. I will now do a screen share, and we can get started. Hopefully, you can see a new window pop up on your screen, and the window should be called How to Innovate in Real Estate Using AI Technologies. This is the topic of today's live stream. My goal is to inspire, my goal is to educate, my goal is to share insights that I have learned over the last 7 years on how you would leverage AI technology in the real estate sector. So let's get started. This is the webinar on innovation, and this is a webinar on how you leverage AI technology. The first business use case of using AI in the real estate is building automation. Building automation is one of the easiest ways companies are creating massive value, because every single construction, every single operation requires more autonomous control, more autonomous operations. This is the first use case. I'll quickly go over the 5 use cases, and then we can dive deeper into every single one. So the second use case is property management. And property management is where a lot of companies are seeing massive growth, and they're able to automate certain tasks. They are able to augment human workers and be able to achieve better management of their properties. The third use case is building operation, property valuation, and construction automation. Again, these are some of the most common ways that companies are using AI technology, and I will use this live stream to dive deeper into each one. And more than happy to answer any specific question that you may have as I discuss this. So feel free to leave a comment in the section where the comments are. So let's get started. So today we want to look at how you would go about using these technologies. And the first use case is building automation. Let's think about this. What our goal actually is to figure out if we can automate the building control and management of systems, right? We want to see if we can better control the buildings that we own and operate, and we want to know if we can do so using automated methods, using automatic systems. And this is the first way we would go about sort of thinking about what can we do using AI technology. So the goal is to automate, and now it's important to look at the data. What data do you have? If you work in the real estate sector, if you are thinking about using AI technology, the first question I have for you is, what data do you have? And here we're aiming to look at existing data. Perhaps it's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning data that comes from HVAC systems. Perhaps it's lighting and access control, or even sort of holistically, perhaps we're looking at how do we better manage the energy of sort of the building. So this is the data we're looking at, and the question arises, if we have this data, how do we go about using that data to automate building control? So the next sort of approach I want to share with you is the method here is to leverage time series data, to leverage data that changes over time, and be able to classify that data and be able to predict that data using supervised learning techniques. This is one of the most common ways that companies are using deep learning. They're using neural networks to solve a very specific problem, in this case, time series classifications, which is the idea that we can better understand how data changes over time by giving that data a label. A simple way to think of time series classification is the building healthy? Is the building under maintenance? Is the building closed for construction? This is a classification. The second most common task that the companies are using today is something called time series prediction. Time series predictions are where we're aiming to predict the next value, right? We're aiming to predict the future. So here we're really aiming to see, how can we use the heating, ventilation, and building data to predict what will happen next, right? If we're able to predict the data tomorrow, if we're able to predict what's happening next week, now we can better make decisions today. So prediction models are one of the best ways that companies are using AI technologies today, because now they're able to make sense of what is the most optimal sort of action we need to take today, so we can better control and we can better manage the buildings tomorrow. So data is the new electricity, famously quoted by Andrew Ng, who is one of the core founders of learning.ai, deep learning, and many other startups around AI space. He is one of the founding fathers of AI technology, and he says that data is the new oil, or in other words, the new electricity. We need data to be able to make these types of solutions possible. So coming back to the first use case is building automation. We're able to achieve this by creating systems that allow us to automate what we typically do as property building managers, as property owners, and now we're able to control, if you were, very aspects of the building system in order to be able to predict, what is the optimal setting for example, energy management, or perhaps sort of the fire alarm system. So this is the first approach. The second approach I want to mention here is we can use a technique called clustering. We can solve clustering using another method called unsupervised learning. So let me do a super high level overview of the difference between sort of the classification using supervised learning or prediction, or the second approach using a clustering where we're doing unsupervised learning technique. Unsupervised learning is where we ask the computer to make some sort of an analysis, some sort of insight based on the data it sees without being able to guide that data. Right? Clustering is simply grouping of data points in a 3D space, and so computers that are able to cluster data are doing so automatically, without human intervention. And this is an excellent approach, a second approach, if you were, to how you would go about creating a building automated system for using AI technology. First being, we're learning from examples of data. Second being, we're asking the computer to make some sort of an insight based on its own evaluation. So clustering is one way to do that. Using time series modeling is a second way to do so. So that brings me to the second use case that I want to discuss with you, which is property management. So second way that companies are using sort of the AI technology today is to be able to manage properties. And here, companies are really aiming to evaluate the conditions of the different properties and property units. And by evaluating the condition, they can have a better understanding of what action they need to take. Right? If a condition is not healthy, then what are the factors that causes that unit to sort of be unsustainable or be under repair. Right? And here we're looking at very unique data. Examples of data is where we're looking at data such as visual inspection data through various reporting systems, weather data, and also consumer behavioral data. How many people are coming in and out of units, what are their consumption habits for energy, water, etc. So these are the types of data that companies have today, and these types of data is the data that's necessary to be able to build some sort of property management solution. And the approach here I want you to think about is the idea where we use image classification to really figure out how we can analyze what is inside that property or what is the exterior of that property, right? We imagine we take a picture or a video of the outside of the property and we ask ourselves, how healthy is this building? Perhaps painting requires touch-up, perhaps interior requires renovation. So image classification is one of the most commonly solved tasks in the real estate sector. The second way that companies are using sort of supervised learning techniques is where they're solving a similar model, a similar task called object detection. Object detection models are really aiming to detect what's in the image. Classifications are able to classify or put a category on that image. So object detection is able to detect, well, perhaps we're looking at an interior image of a bathroom, and inside that photo we see a sink, a toilet, and a bathtub. These are objects that are now detected by object detection models, and these models are able to be improved using AI. So these models are now able to be recognized using AI technology. So this is the third way that companies are using the AI. So the second way that companies are using AI, which is to do property management. Next use case is something called clustering using unsupervised learning. Again, this is similar to the first use case of building automation. Again, here we're aiming to understand what is happening and how does that data change as it relates to the elements where perhaps we're looking at how do the images of the exterior of the buildings change over time. How do the weather seasons affect the exterior of the property, right? This is one way we would go about using clustering, but there are many ways to do so. I do want to emphasize that there are more than one way to accomplish the mission here, and the mission here is to be able to create a system that can better manage properties, and property condition is just one specific use case of how we would go about doing so. So that brings me to the third use case of AI technology within the real estate sector, which is building operations. Here, companies have a simple goal: monitor all processes and be able to signal alarms at the right time, at the right moment. So signaling is critical for operations and for management. And here we're now looking at different types of data that is perhaps looking at not just what's happening inside, but we're now perhaps looking at weather condition data. We're looking at performance data of the building and the unit itself. We're analyzing heating, cooling systems, and we're looking at how do the people behave, how do they sort of move in and out of the property. Here we're looking to automate building automations. And so the question then arises, if we're now monitoring different building elements or different processes, how can we automate those processes? And here, our technique is to use time series classifications or time series predictions. Again, the method is supervised learning, whereby we're aiming to classify AI systems and teach them based on examples of previous data. Time series predictions, we're aiming to predict what will happen next with perhaps the performance of the unit or the property. Perhaps we're aiming to optimize for energy, and we're looking at how do we better manage energy consumption. So we're now looking at where is energy used, where is energy leaked, and how is the energy used over time. If we can better understand that data, we can now better manage it. So this is the first approach, where we're aiming to predict that future state, that future context of data. The second approach here is to solve clustering using unsupervised learning. Clustering is an excellent technique whereby we're aiming to figure out how do we group data automatically without teaching the system what to do. Again, similar to the previous two use cases that we've discussed. So the third use case for AI technologies, how companies are using AI is building operations. That brings me to the fourth use case, which is property valuation. This is perhaps one of the biggest. I definitely contemplated on putting this use case first, but I do want to emphasize that the goal here is for any company who is in the real estate sector is to be able to estimate the housing prices, the housing valuations, and this is massively impacting all industries, all sectors within the real estate industry. If we can better predict prices, we can now have better models that can suggest pricing for new real estate owners. We can suggest pricing for buyers, etc. So here we're aiming to be able to look at various attributes of the house, but now we have this new data, this rich data that's coming in, and it's visual data. It's data that was not readily analyzed before, and now we have this data. So this is the first time that companies are now using imagery data. They're using street imagery data. They're using aerial photography to analyze a specific unit as it relates to all of the different housing attributes. And there are two approaches that companies take for a real estate appraisal, for real estate valuation. The first being that we're aiming to solve time series prediction tasks, and we do so using supervised learning. Again, the goal here is to see how we can create a map between all of the house attributes and, more importantly, the visual aspects, and be able to predict the prices over time, right? So this is a novel approach. This is a new method. If we're combining numerical data and visual data, and we're putting this into a neural network, into a deep learning model, now we have this new rich data that was not possible to analyze before. We're running analysis, and we're able to now predict what is the price of a specific unit over time. So the next approach that companies are taking here is to solve something called image classification or object detection. These are just some of the commonly used methods that companies are solving today. And the approach here is to be able to perform supervised learning to be able to solve this specific problem. So again, property valuation is where companies are using AI today. And this is one of the best ways that is putting massive value. If a company is able to predict the pricing today, they're able to offer insights to individuals who are a part of the buying and shopping experience. If they're able to predict prices tomorrow, now we have a new sort of use case emerge where now you have investors come in, and investment companies are now able to make investment decisions based on the property valuation models that are being sort of used to generate data. So imagine an investment company is able to predict that in the next month, due to COVID, there will be a shortage in one area and perhaps an increase in another. Now investments can start being sort of diversified across different domains, across different locations, and that's thanks to the time series predictions that these models are able to generate for the real estate clients. So this is the approach here. Is we're aiming to, in the first approach, to make predictions in time based on numerical data, leveraging imagery data. And the second approach is we're able to detect what is happening using images, but the second approach does require lots of time and lots of effort. So supervised learning, I want to remind everyone who's unfamiliar with this approach, is that it does require data labeling. It does require sort of hand-holding, if you think of it, that we must do to teach AI systems what is proper data, what is labeled data, what is clean data. So what does that mean, right? So we often talk about this idea of clean data, and in the context of property valuation, and if we're analyzing imagery, clean data is simply labeled data where we take time and we annotate or we categorize every single data point, and we use that annotation to teach an AI system what is sort of the data necessary to learn from that data, right? So think of it like, okay, if we're analyzing an image of the exterior of the house, now we have the ability to analyze what is sort of the what is in that image, and now we're able to make sort of classifications on that data. So here the approach is to be able to better predict housing prices, and we're either analyzing numerical data of housing prices over time, or we're scanning imagery and videos to better detect what's in that image. So now we can have a correlation between the image and the house price. So this is the second sort of use case for using AI technology. And I do want to emphasize that this is a live stream. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I do see a comment, and I have a comment on YouTube who said a great info. I appreciate that, Titan. That's very, very great for you to say that. I do want to make this live stream as informative and as educational as possible. And I do want to move forward into the fifth and final use case of AI technology, which is construction automation. Here, companies are aiming to automate the construction process. And this is, I would say, one of the most trending areas of how real estate companies are using AI. And the goal here is to automate the construction process. And the approach is to use autonomous robots. So how do we go about using autonomous robots? What does this mean? Autonomous robots are simply robots that are able to perform tasks in automated fashion, in automated manner. We do not need to be explicit to tell them what to do. Autonomous robots are able to perform the tasks by themselves. So how does this work? So the first thing we do is we look at the different types of data that we can get our hands on. Perhaps we're looking at construction data, right? Data as it relates to phasing, data as it relates to the construction process. And we also look at visual data that's collected by the robot. The visual data can be as simple as a photograph of the sort of the construction process, or it can be more advanced, like using 3D data such as LiDAR, or using video data that's able to capture keyframes over time. So we're looking at visual data, we're combining the data with what's happening on the construction side, with the development and planning and construction. And here we're correlating the two. So this is the type of data we're analyzing on the construction side. So the next method of how we would go about automating that construction process is we now need to solve very specific tasks, right? So what does this mean? We're aiming to solve things like motion planning, robot navigation, continuous control, and these are some of the tasks necessary for autonomous robots to function. Supervised learning is how we would go about teaching these systems, right? It can be as simple as allowing the machine learning practitioner, the data scientist to specify explicit commands, or it can be more sort of guided, whereby we teach what is correct and we sort of teach what is not correct through a supervised learning approach. The second approach that I see companies take today is achieving similar tasks, but now companies are using a different technique. They are performing something called reinforcement learning. So let's break this down. So supervised learning is one approach. Reinforcement learning is the second approach that companies take today. Supervised learning is where we need labeled examples, where we need to teach AI systems through examples of what is correct, what is not correct. Reinforcement learning, on the other hand, is a system, a learning method where we start with the initial set of examples, but then we let the system figure out what works and what doesn't work by itself, right? So here we are guiding an AI system to learn by itself, and reinforcement is simply analyzing what is the impact or result of my action, and is that helpful or hurtful for the robot to achieve its goal. And reinforcement is simply aiming to reinforce, as if you were teaching a dog how to sit. You are reinforcing a system on what is a positive behavior and sort of penalizing for negative behavior. So think of this as positive, negative reinforcement, and this is another way to think of reinforcement learning. We're teaching systems to learn by themselves. We're teaching systems to perform positive behavior that increase our goal, right? And perhaps our goal is to navigate as safely as possible. So the second approach, the most common way that I see companies are sort of crushing the space of autonomous robots and autonomous robotics is where they are guiding systems whereby these systems are able to learn by themselves through reinforcement learning what is proper behavior and what is not, and there's always a goal. And one example is whereby the robot is able to navigate the site. It's able to do so as safely as possible. Safety in navigation is one particular goal that these systems can learn to optimize for, right? Is the robot avoiding collision with individuals? Is the robot avoiding collision with objects on the construction site? Is the robot able to navigate up and down stairs? These are just some of the elements that companies must consider to be able to answer that question. So it's definitely something that is quite useful for individuals to understand and to think about. So I do want to actually bring your attention to a comment. Rael Black on YouTube says, AI is amazing. Definitely, I agree with you, Rael. It's one of the most innovative, most groundbreaking technologies that companies are using today, because it allows companies to fundamentally change how they look at data. It allows companies to change how they look at innovation. It allows companies to automate more and ultimately crush their competition. So I do agree with you, and I think it's an amazing technology that everyone needs to pay attention to today. So to come back to the presentation, so we've discussed 5 different, I would say, use cases for AI technology within the real estate sector, right? I do want to bring this live stream to a conclusion. We are here for a reason. We are here to allow sort of ourselves to expand our thinking. We are here to be more innovative. We are here to explore new ideas using different methods. And the methods I have outlined for you are simply leveraging a new technology. It's leveraging a new method whereby we're using AI technology to solve business problems. We're using AI technology to fundamentally change how the real estate industry works. I shared with you 5 use cases, and I want to remind you that there are many ways to be able to solve AI, and it really depends on your specific data. So if you are working in the real estate sector and you are interested to use AI technologies, I highly encourage you to schedule a brief discovery call with me. I will link to the sort of the discovery call in the commenting section, and I will do so now. Hopefully that will show up on everyone else's commenting section. Let's do this. Perfect. Everyone should see a link to the sort of scheduling that I have set up, and this link allows you to schedule a phone call with me where we can discuss one-on-one how we would go about changing the real estate sector, how we can use AI technology to fundamentally break through and make a different implementation, perhaps rethink some of the older methods. And the real value here comes from thinking about what is the data that you have, right? So I want you to think about, what data do you have, or perhaps what data do you want to have? And as soon as you have this data in mind, now you can envision the future. Now, what does that ideal future look like for you? Do you want to increase revenue at your company? Do you want to decrease costs? Do you want to save time in the real estate sector? Do you want to apply a specific technique in the real estate sector? Do you want to leverage computer vision, natural language processing, or reinforcement learning, perhaps techniques? If you answer yes to any of these questions, then this is definitely an opportunity for you to go ahead and schedule a phone call with me, and we can have a conversation one-on-one. I want to thank you for joining this live stream. It's been a great chatting and discussing about the ways that AI is changing the real estate sector, the way that AI is innovating, and companies today are using AI to make this into a reality. And I want to thank you for your time, and I will also encourage you to subscribe and subscribe to be notified of any upcoming live streams that I will do for Produvia for AI technologies. I will encourage you to hit the bell icon on sort of the bottom and to the side, and the bell icon will allow you to see notifications. I highly encourage you to be proactive and be notified, ask questions, be sort of involved in the conversation as we discuss AI technologies and its application in the real estate sector. I want to conclude this live stream with, once again, thanking you for your time, and I will see you next time.